There are lakes at the bottom of the ocean. Real ones, with shorelines, waves, and their own strange kind of weather. That sounds impossible until you meet a brine pool. Deep under the sea, far below where light can reach, extremely salty water collects in low depressions on the seafloor. It should mix into the ocean around it the way a drop of ink spreads through a glass of water. Instead, it stays put, sitting in its own puddle on the seabed, refusing to blend with everything above it. The reason comes down to density. This water is so saturated with salt that it becomes heavier than the ordinary seawater surrounding it. Because it is denser than regular seawater, it settles like a separate layer, pooling into basins the same way oil pools on top of water. Except here, the heavier fluid sinks to the bottom instead of floating. Ordinary seawater simply cannot push its way in or stir the two together. The result is a sharp, stable boundary between two bodies of water that never meet. Gravity does the sorting that wind and current normally would, holding the brine in place for years, sometimes far longer. Approach one in a submersible and the effect is eerie. From a submarine, the boundary can look like a shoreline, complete with a visible edge where the seafloor disappears beneath a second, separate sea. Waves can ripple across it, exactly as they would on the surface far above. Except this shoreline sits thousands of meters down, lit only by a submersible's floodlights. Small creatures may gather at the edges, drawn by whatever nutrients or shelter the boundary offers, treating the rim of the pool the way animals elsewhere gather at a watering hole. It is a coastline with no sky, no sun, and no surf except its own. But for many animals, falling into the brine can be deadly. The water is so salty and chemically harsh that it can shock or suffocate them. Salt, this concentrated, pulls water straight out of an animal's cells, the same basic process that lets salt preserve meat or wilt a plant, except here it happens to a living body all at once. Oxygen barely dissolves in water this dense, so anything that slips below the surface can suffocate before the salt itself finishes the job. There is little room for hesitation at that boundary. It functions less like a lake and more like a trapdoor, calm on top, lethal just beneath, and any creature crossing the line needs a very good reason or a very specialized body to survive the crossing. These underwater lakes often form near places where ancient salt deposits dissolve, laid down long ago when shallow seas evaporated and left thick beds of salt buried under later layers of sediment. Seawater slowly works its way into those buried deposits, dissolves them, and settles into the nearest low point on the seafloor. Elsewhere, brine pools form where fluids seep from the seabed itself, rising through cracks and fractures from deep below. Either path produces the same result: a small, self-contained sea within a sea, fed from underneath, rather than from above. They can also contain methane and hydrogen sulfide, gases that would be toxic in almost any other setting. That makes them dangerous to many organisms, but useful to specialized microbes that have evolved to run on exactly that chemistry. Instead of relying on sunlight, the way surface life does, these microbes pull energy directly from the seeping gas and mineral-rich fluid, turning a toxic soup into a fuel source. Life finds ways to exploit even strange chemical traps. Around the edges of some pools, that microbial base of the food chain supports small colonies of animals that would never survive a direct plunge into the brine, but can thrive just outside its reach. Brine pools remind us that the ocean is not one uniform blue space. It has layers, rivers, vents, deserts, forests, and lakes hidden inside it, each one shaped by forces most people never think to look for underwater. Density can create invisible walls. Chemistry can build boundaries sharper than temperature, sharper than any current, invisible until a light or a hull happens to cross them. The seafloor is full of landscapes we rarely imagine, because sunlight never reaches them, hidden under kilometers of dark water and easy to forget. Somewhere in the dark, an underwater lake sits under an ocean, with its own shore, its own chemistry, and its own quiet danger, waiting for nothing and no one. Follow for more random things you may not know.